Alpha King Tavian Rookmere broke Honora Blythe's first moonclay bowl with the same hand he once warmed beside her kiln. The sound cracked through Briar Kiln Court, not loud enough to silence the wolves outside the feast hall, loud enough to make every noble watch a widow's life work scatter across black stone. Honora did not kneel to gather the pieces. That would have pleased them too much. She stood beside the long provision table in her faded keyline grey dress, silver hair braided at the nape of her neck, hands stained with pale clay that never fully left the skin. 6 moonclay bowls sat before her, each one shaped by hand, fired under full moon ash, and glazed with mineral lines only old women in her family had known how to read. Moonclay did not accuse by color alone. It remembered what touched food before the tongue did. Bitter root, spoiled glaze, false mineral wash, and poison hidden beneath royal polish. A clean vessel stayed pale. A corrupted supply drew black veins through the clay. Royal provisioner Calder Sen stood on Tavian's right, smiling with the patience of a man who had already won the room. "Majesty," Calder said, "no one questions Widow Blythe's devotion, but the army has returned victorious. The royal table cannot remain hostage to village superstition." Honora looked at him. A bowl that reveals poison is only superstition to the man who benefits from blind cups. A few nobles inhaled. Calder lowered his gaze, making insult look like concern. "You see, grief has made her sharp. Since her husband's death, she has believed every stain in clay to be a warning." Honora's fingers curled once, not around grief, around restraint. "My husband died after eating from a supply line you approved." Calder's smile did not move. "And 24 healers named Winter Lung. 24 healers never touched his cup." Tavian's dark eyes cut to her then. For one breath, she saw the man who used to sit in her workshop after border patrols, shoulders damp with rain, listening to bowls cool on the shelf, because he said the sound made war feel far away. They had never named what sat between kiln heat and midnight silence. That had not made it harmless. Then the king returned. "Enough," Tavian said. The word struck harder because she had once trusted his silence. Honora lifted one of the remaining bowls. Moonlight from the high court window slid across its inner glaze, revealing a faint black vein beneath the rim. "This one touched the feast water this morning," she said. "The clay remembers what the tongue forgives. Test the mineral line before anyone drinks." Calder gave a soft laugh. "And delay the victory feast because a widow's bowl dislikes royal water?" Honora looked at Tavian, not Calder. "Ask why he changed the glaze supply." Calder's expression cooled by a thread. "There has been no unsafe change. Briar Kiln now contracts with a modern workshop, certified by the Royal Provisioning Office. Every certified vessel bears the crescent supply mark, so the kitchens know what is safe. Certified by you, reviewed by the Crown." Every face turned toward Tavian. There it was. The choice made public. A mature artisan with stained hands and no title. A provisioner with ledgers, seals, and the language of efficiency. Tavian stepped closer to the table. His black feast coat carried silver wolf clasps at the throat, bright as teeth. Power sat on him heavily tonight, sharpened by victory, watched by nobles hungry to see the new reign cut away old dependence. "Honora," he said, and her name in his voice still knew the shape of her workshop. She hated that it hurt. "You have served the royal kitchens for many years," he continued. "But the court cannot govern by widow signs and moonlit bowls." A quiet, pleased movement passed through the nobles. Honora kept her chin level. "No, it prefers ledgers that do not tremble when people sicken." Calder sighed. "Majesty, this is precisely the danger. She turns ordinary supply reform into accusation." Tavian picked up a second bowl. Honora's breath caught before she could stop it. He saw. For half a moment, his grip loosened. "Not enough. The royal contract passes to Calder's certified workshop," he said. The Moonclay Witness Vessels are removed from court use. Honora's voice went low. Removed or silenced. His jaw hardened. Then he threw the bowl down. It broke at his feet. Another, then another. Each one split open on the stone. Pale clay showing black veins where clean moonclay should have stayed white. By the fourth bowl, the court had stopped smiling. By the fifth, Tavian had two. Only the oldest bowl remained, small and uneven, the one Honora had carried from her mother's shelf. Calder stepped forward. "Allow me, Majesty." Honora looked at Tavian. "If he breaks that one, you will not be destroying superstition. You will be destroying the last vessel my mother fired before yours learned to eat safely." The court stilled. Tavian's face changed, but only at the edges. Calder's hand hovered over the old bowl. "Sentiment cannot outrank sanitation." "No," Honora said. "But it has outlived your sanitation." Tavian's eyes moved to the black veins inside the broken clay. "Too late. Leave that one," he said. Calder lowered his hand with a bow. "As your Majesty wishes." Honora gathered the old bowl herself. No one helped her. No one picked up the shards. The court simply adjusted around her damage and called it order. Tavian watched her walk toward the side arch. At the threshold he spoke. "Honora." She stopped, but did not turn. "You are dismissed from royal provision work. Do not interfere with the feast." Her hand tightened around the old bowl. "You once knew the difference between interference and warning." Then she left him with the pieces. The victory feast began under silver banners and wolf-bone chandeliers. Nobles lifted black goblets filled from Calder's certified supply. Tavian stood at the head table, his own cup in hand, face hard enough to make regret look like discipline. Calder raised his goblet. "To the Alpha King's modern court." Every cup in Briarkiln Court cracked before it touched a mouth. Not randomly, not from heat. Each black goblet split along the same hidden crescent mark stamped beneath Calder Sen's supply seal. Calder did not deny the goblets had cracked. He denied what broken cups could prove. "A structural failure," he said calmly, while black fragments lay glittering across the royal table. "Kiln stress beneath sudden feast heat. Unfortunate, Majesty, but hardly supernatural judgment." No one drank. That was the first victory Honora had not been allowed to claim. She stood beneath the side arch, with her mother's old moonclay bowl held against her ribs, watching nobles stare into their fractured cups as if the wine might look back. The crescent marks beneath each goblet had split cleanly open, dark seams following the same curve from base to rim. Tavian's hand remained closed around the stem of his broken goblet. His face gave nothing away. Not apology, not belief, only a stillness Honora remembered from old battle wounds, when pain had not yet reached the blood. Calder bowed toward the room. "Please remain calm. The feast supply itself has not been tested. A cracked vessel identifies a manufacturing flaw, not contamination." Honora stepped forward. "Then test it." Calder's gaze turned to her with gentle public pity. "Widow Blythe, your own broken moonclay shards were scattered across the hall moments before the cups failed. It is entirely possible old mineral dust disturbed the new glaze." A few nobles looked at the pale shards near Tavian's boots. There it was again. Not denial. Redirection. Honora's voice stayed level. "Moonclay dust does not crawl across every royal cup and split only the crescent supply mark. The crescent mark identifies the certified batch," Calder replied. "It does not name poison. Then ask why the batch broke before the wine touched a mouth." Tavian finally looked at her. The force of it almost hurt worse than being dismissed. "You said the clay remembers what the tongue forgives," he said. Honora did not soften. "Yes. What do black veins mean under moonclay law?" Calder's expression tightened. "Only for a breath." Honora saw it. So did Tavian. "A false mineral wash," she said. Spoiled glaze, bitter root, rot hidden beneath polish. Anything the kitchen pretends is clean because it smells expensive. Calder gave a low, controlled laugh. That is poetry, not law. Honora turned to him. Working women made law before royal offices learned to stamp wax. The hall went too quiet. Tavian's jaw flexed. Who supplied the new glaze? Calder answered smoothly. The certified workshop procured all materials according to royal provisioning rules. That is not what I asked. A ripple passed through the nobles. Calder bowed. The mineral wash came through Briar Kiln's approved suppliers. Honora said, Ask when it changed. Tavian's eyes did not leave Calder. When was the mineral wash changed? Calder spread his hands. Majesty, supply adjustments are ordinary before a victory feast. Large orders require efficiency. Efficiency, Honora repeated. That is a clean word for making servants carry what nobles refuse to taste first. A young kitchen runner near the lower table flinched. He could not have been more than 17. Sleeves rolled to the elbow, face pale beneath soot freckles. In his shaking hands, he held a silver testing cup filled with feast water. Calder saw him too. Bring that here, Calder said. Let formal testing settle the widow's panic. The boy stepped forward. Honora's old bowl warmed against her hands. Not gently, like warning. She looked down. The bowl's pale inner surface had darkened beneath the rim, a black vein twisting toward the side facing the kitchen runner. Do not drink, Honora said. Calder turned sharply. No one ordered him to drink. He is carrying a sample. The boy stopped. Tavian looked at the bowl. What did it do? Honora lifted it carefully. The vein spread another inch, black against old white clay, pointing toward the silver testing cup. It answered what touched the cup, she said. Calder's mouth flattened. Or it reacted to grief and proximity, as old superstition often does. Honora looked at the boy. Did that cup touch the feast water? He swallowed. Yes, mistress. Did it touch my broken bowls? No. Did it touch the black goblets? No. Tavian stepped down from the head table. Nobles drew back as their alpha king crossed the floor toward a widow he had publicly shamed minutes ago. Honora did not mistake movement for repair. He stopped an arm's length away. Give me the bowl. No. The answer cut the hole. His eyes sharpened. For one old, dangerous heartbeat, he was the alpha king asking obedience. Honora met him with both hands around her mother's vessel. You broke 5 because Calder said my knowledge made your court look old, she said. You do not get to hold the last one because it has become useful. Something passed over his face. Not anger. Recognition. Calder spoke into it quickly. Majesty. This display proves the problem. She controls the only remaining vessel and directs its meaning according to resentment. Honora did not look away from Tavian. Ask whose seal replaced mine in the royal kitchen. Tavian turned to the clerk beside the provision table. Bring the certified workshop batch record. Calder's voice remained composed. A batch record will show ordinary procurement. Then you should welcome it. The clerk hurried through the side door. No one moved. The old Moonclay bowl continued to darken toward the kitchen runner's cup. The boy slowly set the silver sample down on the stone, as if placing a live coal away from his body. Tavian watched him. At last, guilt touched the king's face. Small, late, not enough, Honora said. Do not look wounded because the warning chose a servant before it chose you. He absorbed that, without answering. The clerk returned with a thin slate stamped in black wax. Tavian took it and read under the silver chandeliers. His eyes stopped halfway down. Calder's calm did not break. Majesty? Tavian turned the slate toward the hall. At the bottom, beneath the crescent seal, one line glowed faintly where the moonlight struck the ink. Certified workshop batch. Mineral wash changed before victory feast. The glowing line on the batch slate made the feast hall quieter than a threat. Tavian read it twice. Kelda lit him. That was how careful men survived dangerous moments. They did not rush to cover the blade. They waited until everyone remembered blades could be explained as tools. Mineral wash changed, Calder said at last. Not corrupted. A victory feast requires hundreds of vessels, Majesty. No royal kitchen can serve an army and a court on widowcraft alone. Honora stood with her mother's bowl held close, watching Tavian's thumb press against the edge of the slate. His hand had broken her work. Now that same hand held proof he should have asked for before the first bowl hit stone. Tavian looked up. Why was I not told? Calder bowed his head. You were told the contract had modernized. The exact wash ratio was not throne business. The cups broke in my hall before anyone drank. And no one drank because we stopped the feast, Calder replied smoothly. That proves caution worked. Honora's laugh was small and cold. Caution arrived after Moonclay screamed. Several kitchen servants near the lower arch looked toward her, not like nobles looked, not with suspicion, with recognition. Tavian saw that too. Why are they looking at you? Calder answered first. Because fear seeks an older face. Widow Blythe has always been kind to the kitchens. Honora turned toward him. Do not make kindness sound harmless when it is the only reason some of them are still standing. The young runner who had carried the silver cup lowered his eyes. Tavian's voice sharpened. Explain. Honora did not want to. Not here. Not with lords seated beneath wolf-bone chandeliers, pretending workers' sickness became important only when royal cups cracked. But the old bowl warmed against her ribs again. It had recognized the boy before the king did. So she spoke. For 6 months, kitchen workers have come to my kiln after dark, she said. Not for charms. Not for widow tales. For bowls that blackened after touching soup ladles, water pails, soldier broth, and serving cups from the new supply. Calder sighed. Unverified visits from frightened servants. Servants your office sent back to work. Because healers found fatigue, smoke cough, and winter stomach. Honora's eyes hardened. Winter does not choose only hands that wash royal dishes. A murmur moved along the lower tables. Tavian stepped closer to the servants. Is this true? No one answered. Fear held their mouths more tightly than loyalty ever could. Honora did not blame them. She looked at Tavian instead. Do not ask them while Calder still signs their bread. That struck the hall. Calder's expression remained calm, but the room had heard the shape of power. Tavian turned to the captain near the door. No kitchen worker is to be dismissed, questioned alone, or removed from Briar Kiln Court tonight. Calder's eyes narrowed almost invisibly. Majesty, that may imply wrongdoing before inquiry. No, Tavian said. It prevents silence from being purchased with supper. Honora felt the words land too near old warmth. She moved back from it. He noticed. Good. Honora, he said lower now. Why did you not bring this directly to me? She looked at him, and there it was again. Kiln heat. Midnight silence. His tired shoulders in her doorway before crown and conquest hardened him into public stone. I did, she said. The room chilled. Tavian stopped. When? 3 notices. 2 warning bowls. 1 sealed packet of blackened glaze scrap. Her voice did not shake. All returned by the Royal Provisioning Office as unscientific widow residue. Calder spread his hands. My office receives dozens of folk remedies, curse stones, and panic samples every season. I sent names. That quieted him. Only for a breath. Tavian's eyes changed. Names? Honora looked toward the servants. Mara Bell, scald maid. Harlan Oat, broth carrier. Senate Pike, cavalry cook. Old Bryn from the West Pantry. 7 more who lost work when their hands shook too badly to lift trays. A woman near the kitchen arch covered her mouth. Honora continued because stopping would dishonor them. I paid for bitterleaf tonics when the court physician called them dramatic. I fired test cups at night until my hands blistered open. I sold my husband's last silver ore for mineral salts because Calder's office would not release a clean sample. Tavian looked as if something inside him had been struck, not broken yet, but cracked along its first hidden line. Calder stepped neatly into the wound. Majesty, grief makes ledgers of coincidences. Widow Blythe lost her husband and began finding illness everywhere supply reform touched. Honora faced him. No, I began finding illness where your crescent seal replaced mine. The old Moonclay bowl darkened suddenly. Its black vein spread across the inner curve, then stopped in the exact shape of a crescent. Every fractured goblet on the royal table answered with a faint, silver tick. One by one the cracks brightened. The clerk near Tavian whispered, "Majesty." Tavian did not look away from the bowl. "Read the feast water test." The clerk lowered the silver sample into a shallow moonclay shard. The shard should have stayed white. Instead, a black crescent opened through it like a wound remembering its knife. The hall held its breath. Calder's voice remained controlled. "A matching shape identifies batch contact, not poison." Honora looked at Tavian, then asked why every sick worker touched the same batch. The shard brightened beneath the clerk's trembling hand, and words formed along the black vein. Feast water test. Black vein reaction matches Calder's crescent seal. Calder did not answer the black crescent. He answered the woman holding the bowl. That was wiser. Courts could be made to doubt objects if they first learned to distrust the hands that carried them. "Majesty," he said, voice low with controlled urgency, "we must consider contamination by design." Honora looked at him across the broken feast table. "Say what you mean." Calder turned toward the nobles. Not her. Widow Blythe had access to the old Moonclay vessels. She scattered their shards across the hall. Her surviving bowl reacts only when she chooses to lift it. The feast was disrupted at the exact moment her contract was lost. A murmur moved quickly, not because he had proven anything, because he had given the court permission to feel safe again. Tavian's gaze sharpened. "Are you accusing her of poisoning the feast?" "I am saying grief and humiliation can make even loyal people desperate." Honora's fingers tightened around her mother's bowl. "A desperate woman would have begged when you took her work." Calder looked at her with patient sorrow. "You did something more effective." The young kitchen runner flinched near the arch. Honora saw the boy's fear and forced herself not to look hurt. Hurt would become Calder's evidence if she let it show. Tavian stepped between the table and the lower servants. "No one accuses without proof." Calder bowed. "Then let proof be public." That stopped the hall. Honora already knew what he would ask before he said it. Men like Calder loved trials, where the rules were built from their own assumptions. "A controlled vessel test," he said. 3 samples. Feast water, clean water from the sealed well, and a mineral wash from the certified workshop. Widow Blythe's bowl must identify corruption without contact from her hand. Honora said, "My bowl is not a court dog trained to bark at your convenience." Calder's expression softened. "Convenience? You demanded testing. Now that testing may examine your claims, you resist." Tavian looked at her. There it was again. The hesitation, less cruel than before, still a wound. "You ordered him to test me," Honora said. "I ordered proof." Tavian replied. "No," she said. "You ordered the last vessel my mother fired to stand trial because a man with a seal called my grief suspicious." A silence followed. Tavian's jaw worked once. He could have stopped it there. He did not. "The test proceeds," he said, "under royal witness." Something in Honora went very still. "Not dead. Put away." Calder inclined his head. "Wise, Majesty." Honora turned to Tavian fully. "Do not call this wisdom later when it begins to look like regret." His eyes darkened. "Good. Let him carry that before the next bowl broke." A long black table was cleared at the center of Briar Kiln Court. Servants gathered the royal cups without touching the split crescent marks. The nobles leaned forward with the appetite people had for a woman being measured by rules she did not write. The old bowl was placed on a square of clean linen. Honora removed her hands from it. Immediately, she felt ridiculous for the grief that rose in her throat. It was only clay. That was what they would say. Only clay that had known her mother's thumbs. Only clay that had sat beside her husband's bed when his breath turned shallow. Only clay that had fed soldiers broth before battles and warned kitchen girls when soup had soured. Only the last thing in the room that had not lied to her. Calder produced 3 sealed cups. He did it beautifully. 1 silver, 1 bone white, 1 black glass. Each vessel is marked beneath, he said. No one present will know which contains which sample, except the clerk who filled them. Honora looked at the clerk, a thin man from Calder's office. Of course, she said. Choose a kitchen girl. Calder paused. Pardon? Let someone who drinks from these kitchens fill the samples. Not a man whose supper depends on your approval. The hall stirred. Tavian turned to the lower arch. You. Step forward. A scullery girl with red hands and a torn sleeve froze. Honora softened her voice. Your name? Elsa. Mistress. Elsa, Tavian said. You will fill 3 new cups under the priest's eye. No one touches the samples after you. Calder smiled faintly. As long as she follows instruction. Honora did not look away from the girl. She has followed instructions all her life. That is not what endangers this court. Elsa filled the samples with shaking care. Feast water. Sealed well water. Certified mineral wash. The 3 cups were placed around the old Moonclay bowl. For a moment, nothing happened. Calder let the silence grow. You see, Majesty? Without Widow Blythe's hand, the vessel does not perform. Honora stared at the bowl, not begging. Never that, but remembering every night she had sat by the kiln, whispering to cooling clay, because no one else wanted to hear what it had survived. Tavian looked at her across the table. Honora. She did not answer. What should happen? She raised her eyes. Clean water should leave it pale. A false wash should draw black through the side facing it, Calder said gently. Then perhaps the bowl knows no false wash. The old vessel shuddered. A tiny sound, almost too small for the court, but not for Honora. The linen beneath the bowl darkened first. Then a black vein appeared along the outer curve, not facing the feast water, not facing the well water, but bending toward the sealed mineral wash. Calder's smile remained, too carefully. Tavian saw it. The bowl did not crack. The cup beside it did. The black glass sample split from base to rim, along a hidden crescent seal beneath the wax. Elsa stepped back with a cry. The priest bent over the broken sample and lifted the wax fragment with trembling fingers. Stamped beneath it, where no court guest should have seen, was Calder Sen's private provision mark. Tavian looked from the seal to Calder. Calder said, A private mark proves custody, Majesty, not corruption. The old bowl answered before Honora could. Its pale clay turned black around one word forming inside the rim. Wash. The word inside the old bowl did not fade. It sat against the blackened clay, plain and patient, as if the vessel had no need to shout what the court had spent all night refusing to hear. Wash. Calder looked at it and smiled. Small, controlled. A material reaction, he said. Nothing more. Mineral wash is exactly what the test cup contained. Honora looked at Tavian. He is teaching you how to survive the truth one smaller word at a time. The old bowl warmed in her hands. Not like comfort, like warning remembered by touch. Tavian stared at the cracked black glass sample. The hidden crescent seal had split cleanly beneath Calder's private provision mark. The same crescent had opened every royal goblet. The same black vein had crossed Honora's broken Moonclay bowls. For the first time since he had smashed them, Tavian did not look at the shards as debris. He looked at them like witnesses. Clear the table, he said. Calder turned. Majesty, no one eats, no one drinks. Every certified vessel from Calder's workshop is removed from use. A sound broke through the nobles. Not protest yet. Fear. Calder bowed, but his voice sharpened under courtesy. That will imply the Royal Provision Office endangered the court before formal proof exists. Tavian's eyes remained on the broken crescent. Formal proof nearly waited until after my nobles drank, Honora said, and after the servants tasted first. Tavian looked toward the lower tables. Kitchen workers stood there in their aprons and soot-marked sleeves. The people who would have carried, poured, sampled, cleaned, swallowed mistakes before anyone with a title felt threatened by them. His face changed, not softened, weighted. Every kitchen worker who handled feast water, glaze, broth, or certified cups remains under royal protection, he said. No dismissal, no questioning alone, no wage withheld. Calder's gaze flickered. Honora saw it. So did the old bowl. A thin black vein pulsed once beneath her thumb. Calder recovered. Majesty, protecting workers is humane. But suspending an entire certified contract on the interpretation of a widow's vessel risks panic across the pack. Honora stepped forward. Panic is what they call it when the people being harmed begin to understand the pattern. Tavian turned to her. What does Wash carry? She hated the question because it was almost right, and because he had waited until the bowl was nearly the last thing left. Glaze memory, she said. Mineral trace. What sealed a surface, what touched food after fire and before the mouth. Calder gave a weary sigh. Again, craft poetry. Honora looked at him. Craft kept soldiers alive before your office learned to purchase ink. The nobles stiffened. Tavian did not silence her. That should not have mattered. It did. He stepped closer, stopping before the distance became too intimate. Can Moonclay tell which wash was used? Sometimes. Can it identify who changed it? No, she said. Clay remembers contact. Men hide intent. Calder spread his hands as if grateful for her honesty. Then we are finished for tonight. There is no accusation, only material uncertainty. No, Tavian said. Now we open the supply ledgers. Calder's smile held. Barely. The full ledgers include army routes, storehouse weights, and private pack provisions. Opening them in a feast hall would be reckless. You preferred public ceremony when her bowls were broken. The sentence struck the hall so hard several nobles looked at Honora before looking back at their king. Honora did not reward him with gratitude. She bent and picked up one pale shard from the first broken bowl. Black veining ran through it where clean moonclay should have stayed white. Tavian watched her, his hand lowered at his side, fingers flexing once, as if memory had made him want to help, and guilt had taught him not to reach. Good. Let restraint hurt him. Honora, he said quieter, what records should be opened first? She held the shard between them. Do not ask me like I am back in your service. A muscle moved in his jaw. I know you are not. Do you? She asked. Because 10 minutes ago my knowledge was superstition. Now that it may save your table, you want it named expertise. His eyes darkened. You are right. The words were too small for what he had done. She let them remain small. Open the mineral purchase ledger, she said. Then the glaze receipt. Then the batch firing record. Not the ceremonial contract Calder prepared for your approval. The working papers, Calder said smoothly. Working papers are not crown-facing documents. Honora turned toward him. That is why they tell the truth. Tavian looked to the clerk. Bring them. The clerk did not move. His eyes went to Calder. There, the smallest betrayal in the room. Tavian saw it and went still. Do you take instruction from your king, he asked, or from the provisioner who signs your storehouse ration? The clerk paled. Your Majesty, bring the working papers. The clerk ran. Calder's calm became colder. You are allowing a dismissed artisan to direct a royal investigation. No, Tavian said. I am allowing the only person who warned me before the cups cracked to identify what I should have asked before breaking her work. Honora felt the sentence land near her heart. She moved it away. Calder turned to the nobles. If the Crown lets every old trade claim override certified offices, no contract in the kingdom will stand. Honora answered before Tavian could. If a contract needs poisoned hands to stand, let it fall. The old bowl gave a soft sound. Not a crack. A ring. The shards scattered across the floor answered one by one, pale edges lighting silver beneath their black veins. The clerk returned with a bound ledger and 3 loose firing slips. Tavian opened the ledger himself. His thumb stopped on the mineral purchase line. A section had been scraped clean, not crossed out. Scraped. Honora's breath went still. Calder looked almost bored. Common correction. Account clerks revise entries constantly. Tavian placed the Moonclay shard against the scraped space. The shard blackened immediately. Then the empty ledger line filled with faint silver script, as if the clay had remembered the ink that paper had been forced to forget. Royal Supply Ledger. Original mineral wash entry removed before contract signing. The erased ledger line did not make Calder look guilty. It made him look tired. That was the most dangerous kind of innocence, Honora had learned. The kind that invited a room to feel embarrassed for suspecting a respectable man. A removed entry proves correction, Calder said, not crime. The Moonclay shard stayed black against the scraped ledger. Tavian did not lift it away. What was corrected? He asked. Calder folded his hands behind his back. Supplier classification. Old terms, new terms. The modern workshop uses updated mineral language. Honora looked at the ledger. Clay has no patience for updated lies. Calder turned to her with faint pity. And this is why craft knowledge must be guided by institutions. A material change can frighten those who do not understand scale. Scale? She said. You mean how much poison can be served before nobles call it policy? A few servants lowered their eyes. Tavian heard the silence more than the words. He looked toward the working papers. Read the substitute entry. The clerk hesitated. Calder's voice came softly. Careful. Misreading supply shorthand could damage royal confidence. Tavian's stare cut to him. Royal confidence cracked with the cups. The clerk swallowed and bent over the faint silver script forming beneath the shard. Original mineral wash. White ash. River lime. Clean bone salt. Honora closed her eyes once. That was the safe mixture. The one her mother had taught her to test by breath and steam. The one her husband had trusted. The clerk continued, voice thinner now. Replacement wash. Black marl compound. Forge. Brightener. Reduced bone salt. A kitchen woman whispered, Black marl. Honora opened her eyes, not in surprise. In grief. Finally given a name, Tavian noticed. What is black marl? Calder answered quickly. A stabilizing compound. Common in bulk firing. Safe when sealed properly. Honora's laugh was quiet and empty. Safe for roof tiles. Safe for drainage jars. Safe for anything that does not hold broth, wine, or water touched by heat. The court shifted. Calder's expression hardened by a small degree. Widow Blythe is not a royal chemist. No, she said. I am worse for you. I am a woman who washed bowls after men like you ate. Tavian looked at her then. The line struck something too personal between them. He remembered. She saw it in his face. Those late nights at her kiln when he had eaten stew from a Moonclay bowl with both hands wrapped around it, too exhausted to pretend hunger was royal. He had trusted her craft when no one watched, then broken it when everyone did. What does black marl do? He asked her. She did not answer gently. Repeated heat loosens it. Sour wine wakes it faster. Salt broth carries it into the body. Small amounts do not kill a noble in one feast. They make the hands tremble first, then the stomach. Then the breath shortens. Then healers call it winter weakness, because poison served slowly looks like age, labor, or grief. The lower hall went still. A soldier near the side wall gripped the back of a chair. Tavian saw him. Were soldiers served from this wash? Calder raised one hand. Majesty, army vessels require different review. We cannot collapse categories because a bowl has darkened. Honora pointed to the firing slips. Read the service lines. The clerk looked terrified now. Tavian's voice went low. Read them. The clerk lifted the first slip. Royal feast goblets. The second. Kitchen tasting cups. The third slip stuck under his thumb. Calder said, Those slips are incomplete. Honora did not look away from the clerk. Incomplete paper still knows when it was used. The old bowl on the linen gave a soft ring. The third slip darkened at the corner. Letters bled through the scraped wax. Soldier broth vessels, the clerk whispered. A sound moved from the servants' arch to the guards' posts. Not a gasp. Recognition. Tavian stood very still. Honora felt no satisfaction. Truth had weight, and this one had bodies beneath it. Calder's voice sharpened. Even if black marl was used, proper sealing prevents harm. Any illnesses among workers or soldiers may have come from battlefield exposure, smoke, exhaustion, poor diet. Everything except the cup, Honora said. Everything except your obsession. Tavian looked at Calder then. Do not call evidence obsession. Calder bowed. Smooth again. I call grief dangerous when it arranges unrelated sickness into accusation. Honora stepped closer to the table. Her mother's bowl sat between her and Tavian, black-veined and steady. I tracked heat lines for 6 months, she said. I did not begin with accusation. I began with a scullery maid whose fingers shook too badly to braid her own hair, then a broth carrier who vomited after every night shift, then 3 soldiers whose lips went grey after eating from the new camp vessels. Every line led back to the same replacement wash. Tavian's face tightened. And my office returned your warnings. Calder's office, she corrected. Your crown. He took that like a blow he had earned. Calder saw the shift and struck. Majesty, if you let this proceed, every soldier's illness becomes a provision scandal. Every kitchen ache becomes a royal failure. The victory feast becomes a trial of your reign. Tavian looked at the broken cups, the servants, the ledger, then Honora. At last, he asked the question she had waited too long to hear. What did I break tonight? Her throat hurt. She would not let it show. Bowls first, she said. Then warning. Then whatever trust still knew the way from your throne to my kiln. The hall held its breath. He did not apologize. Good. An apology would have been too small and too soon. He turned to the clerk. Place the shard on the replacement entry. Calder's hand moved. Majesty, Tavian's voice cut colder than winter iron. Do not touch the record. The clerk placed the blackened Moonclay shard over the words, Black Marl Compound. The old bowl rang once. Every broken goblet answered. Across the ledger page, silver script burned through the scraped line. Substitute mineral wash. Black Marl Compound approved for food and soldier service despite heat sickness warnings. The words on the ledger burned long enough for every noble to read them twice. Then they faded into the page like heat sinking into old bone. No one cheered. No one accused Calder aloud. That was how Honora knew the truth had not yet won. It had only become too visible to ignore. Calder stood beside the provision table with his hands folded, expression grave but unbroken. Heat sickness warnings, he said, may refer to kiln workers handling raw compounds before proper sealing. It does not prove the finished vessels endangered the royal table. Honora looked at him. You keep moving the harm away from mouths. Because accuracy matters. Then be accurate. Whose mouths were safe enough to risk? The servants at the lower arch went silent. Tavian turned toward Calder. Did your office receive heat sickness warnings? Calder bowed his head. My office receives many reports. Some from jealous suppliers. Some from laborers who dislike modernization. some from old workshops afraid of losing relevance. Honora felt the room tilt toward him again. Not fully, but enough. Respectability was a thick cloak. Men like Calder could wrap themselves in it even while standing beside cracked cups. She lifted her mother's bowl from the linen. Tavian's gaze moved to her hands. "What are you doing?" "Leaving." The word cut through the hall more cleanly than anger. Calder's eyes sharpened. "Leaving now would be irresponsible. If your vessel is reliable, the court requires it." Honora laughed once. "Requires. That is a familiar word. It comes after dismissed, after mocked, after broken." Tavian stepped toward her, then stopped himself. Good. He was learning the shape of the distance he had made. "Honora," he said, "the kitchens are not safe." "I know. Then help me make them safe." She looked at him then, not softly, not with the warmth he had once come to her workshop to steal from the air. "You broke my bowls in public because Calder told you my knowledge embarrassed your modern court. Now that your modern court cannot eat, you want the widow back beside the table." His face tightened. "I want no one poisoned. That is not the same as wanting truth." The old bowl in her hand stayed dark at the rim. Calder said, gently enough for the court to hear reason instead of threat, "Mistress Blythe, walking away while workers may be at risk will not restore your dignity." "No," she said. "Staying as the tool you use while refusing to name the hands that shook will not restore theirs." A kitchen woman began to cry quietly. Honora did not look at her. If she did, she might stay from tenderness, and tenderness had been used against working women long before Calder learned to smile. Tavian's voice lowered. "What do you need?" The question hurt, because once in her workshop he had asked it differently, not as a king trying to reopen a closed table, but as a man with rain in his hair and blood on his sleeve, watching her grind moon ash by candlelight. "What do you need, Honora?" "Sleep," she had said. "Then I'll sit here until you remember how." She hated him for remembering too late. "I need you to stop making my bowl do what your crown refused to do," she said. Calder stepped closer. "Majesty, if she leaves with the only functioning witness vessel, the investigation collapses into her control." Honora looked at him. "No. It collapses into your records. And if those records are incomplete, then perhaps the court should ask, why completeness only matters after women are disbelieved." Tavian said nothing. That silence was almost right. Almost. Honora turned toward the lower arch. The young runner from before stood there, face pale, one hand braced against the wall. She stopped. "What is your name?" "Perrin, mistress. Go home if you can. If they keep you here, ask for water from the sealed well in clay that has not touched Calder's wash." Calder's mouth tightened. "You are issuing kitchen orders. I am issuing survival." Tavian looked to the guard captain. "No worker leaves through a private gate. No worker is detained. Anyone ill is taken to the West Infirmary under royal protection." Honora did not thank him. The first right thing done late was still late. She walked toward the side arch with the old bowl wrapped against her body. Each step carried her past the shards he had made of her life's work. Tavian's voice followed her. "If you walk out, I may not be able to prove the rest tonight." She stopped beside the broken pieces. "You should have thought of proof before you mistook destruction for leadership." He flinched. The court saw. Good. Let them see a king hurt without letting it become the widow's duty. She bent then, not kneeling to the court, but crouching for the clay. One by one, she gathered the largest shards into the fold of her apron. The black veins inside them glimmered faintly, as if they knew her touch and did not need permission from the crown. Tavian did not help. That was the second right thing. He only stood there with his hands empty while she collected what he had broken. At the arch, Calder spoke one last time. A loyal artisan would remain. Honora turned back. A loyal king would have tested before he shattered. The hall did not breathe. Then she left Briar Kiln Court. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. Then, from the royal kitchen beyond the feast hall, came the sound of cracking. One vessel, then another, then dozens. A guard ran through the side door, face white. Majesty, the stew kettles, tasting cups, storage jars, every certified piece in the royal kitchen is splitting. Tavian turned toward the sound. The old moonclay shards on the floor lit silver around his boots. They formed 3 words in the broken clay: kitchen service, unsafe. By dawn, Briar Kiln Court had no dish fit to hold water. The certified tasting cups lay split in baskets. The stew kettles had opened along their rivets. Storage jars cracked through their bellies, spilling oats, salt, dried apples, and pale flour across the royal kitchen floor like a winter field trampled by panic. Tavian stood in the center of it without his feast coat. No silver wolf clasps, no victory banners, only rolled sleeves, a soot-darkened collar, and the smell of broken glaze. Calder Sen stood near the pantry doors, still composed, though less comfortably now. Majesty, shutting the kitchens will create fear across the pack. Soldiers must be fed. Servants must work. Nobles will assume contamination has been proven. Tavian picked up a split tasting cup. The hidden crescent mark had cracked through the base. Has it not? Calder's mouth tightened. It has been suggested by reactive clay and damaged vessels. Reactive clay warned before my table drank. A coincidence of timing. Tavian looked toward the West Infirmary Hall, where kitchen workers waited under guard protection, not guard threat. Some sat on benches with shaking hands wrapped in cloth. Others leaned against the stone, too proud to collapse where nobles might see. Call it coincidence to Perrin, Tavian said. Calder's gaze flickered to the young runner, lying on a cot near the door, grey-lipped and sweating through his shirt. Individual illness cannot bear the weight of a kingdom inquiry. No, Tavian said. That is why I am asking for every illness. Calder went still. The clerk beside Tavian opened a new ledger. Tavian spoke clearly enough for every worker, guard, and noble witness in the kitchen to hear. Record names of all kitchen workers, tasters, scullery maids, broth carriers, soldiers, kiln hands, and provision staff who handled Calder's certified vessels or black marl wash. No one is dismissed. No one is blamed for sickness. No wage is withheld while they are examined. Calder's voice sharpened. Majesty, you are building a scandal from weakness. Tavian looked at him. No, I am building a record where your office left silence. The words cost him less than they should have. That was the shame of it. He should have said them before Honora walked out carrying broken pieces of her life's work. A healer entered with 2 assistants and a box of glass vials. Majesty, the West Infirmary is ready. Not only the West Infirmary, Tavian said. Open the guest wing. Move nobles elsewhere if beds are needed. A few courtiers protested softly. Tavian turned his head. They stopped. Servants ate before you, he said. They will be treated before your comfort is arranged. The old kitchen went silent. Then one scullery woman began to cry without covering her face. Tavian did not look away. That too was repair. Not enough, but real. The captain entered from the courtyard. Majesty, the certified workshop is sealed. No one leaves. The firing house ledgers are being brought. And Calder's private supply papers. Calder stepped forward. My private papers contain trade agreements unrelated to royal food service. Tavian's eyes cut to him. You put a private mark on a public cup. A low murmur moved through the workers. Calder bowed his head as if wounded by suspicion. I marked custody to ensure accountability. Then be accountable. The captain nodded and left. Tavian looked down at the split cup in his hand. He remembered Honora's workshop too sharply now. The glow of the kiln through winter rain. The careful way she tapped each bowl and listened for truth in its ring. The nights he had let her feed him from clay, because he trusted what she made, more than what his own war tents served. He had believed in her when belief cost him nothing. then publicly destroyed her when belief required courage. The old thought made his hand close too tightly. The cup cut his palm. Blood slipped across the crescent crack. The nearest shard on the floor rang once. Not loudly, but every worker heard it. The black vein in the broken cup turned silver where his blood touched it. The clerk whispered, "Majesty." Tavian did not understand the reaction, but he understood enough not to pretend he owned it. "Send to Honora Blythe," he said, "not a summons." The clerk lifted his pen. "A request," Tavian said. "Tell her the kitchens are closed, the workers are under protection, the ledgers are open, and Calder's custody papers are being seized." Calder exhaled. "You would invite her back after she abandoned the inquiry?" Tavian turned slowly. "She did not abandon it. She refused to let us use the last vessel after I broke the others." The clerk waited. Tavian added, quieter, "Tell her I will not ask her to repair my table." The pen stopped. "Maestu." "Write it." The clerk wrote. Tavian looked toward the infirmary hall, where names were beginning to fill the new ledger. Perrin, Elsa, Maribel, Harlan Oat, Senate Pike, Old Bryn, more names than any feast hall apology could hold. "Tell her," Tavian said, "I am asking what must be repaired before a table deserves repair." For the first time that morning, Calder's calm truly changed. Not broken, threatened. Outside, rain struck the kiln courtyard. Far beyond the palace walls, in Honora Blythe's dark workshop, the shards gathered in her apron began to ring. Honora did not return because Tavian asked. She returned because Elsa came. The scullery girl stood in the doorway of Honora's workshop before noon, rainwater dripping from her torn sleeve, both hands wrapped around a cup of sealed well water she had not yet trusted herself to drink. "The king sent a note," Elsa said. Honora looked at the folded parchment in the girl's hand. "Kings send notes when they do not want to stand where damage was done." Elsa swallowed. "He sent me because I asked to come." That made Honora look up. The girl's face was pale, but not empty. Fear had lived there too long. Now, something else stood beside it. Need. Not for rescue. For witness. Honora took the parchment and read Tavian's words in silence. "The kitchens are closed, the workers are protected, the ledgers are open. Calder's custody papers have been seized. I am not asking you to repair my table. I am asking what must be repaired before any table deserves repair." Honora hated that the last line knew how to find her. She folded the note once. Did he write this before or after the nobles complained of hunger? Elsa blinked. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "Before, mistress." Honora turned toward the workbench. Her mother's bowl sat among the gathered shards of the vessels Tavian had broken. Through the morning, they had rung softly each time a name was written in Briarkiln Court. Perrin, Maribel, Harlanot, Senate Pike, Old Bryn. More names than any one woman should have had to carry alone. Honora wrapped the old bowl in linen. "Then we will see if his hunger has learned patience." Briarkiln Court looked smaller without the feast. The banners still hung. The wolf-bone chandeliers still gleamed. But the royal tables had been stripped bare, and rows of workers now sat where nobles had eaten the night before. Kitchen hands, scullery maids, broth carriers, soldiers, kiln loaders, pantry boys with shaking fingers, older women who had hidden pain because pain cost wages. Calder stood under guard near the provision ledgers, still dressed as if control had merely changed rooms. Tavian stood before the workers, not on the dais. That mattered. Not enough, but it mattered. When Honora entered, every head turned. Tavian's face changed first with relief, then with the restraint to hide it from becoming claim. "Honora," he said. She stopped several steps away. "Do not thank me. I was not going to. You were thinking it." His mouth tightened. "Yes. Then learn to think quieter." A few workers lowered their eyes. Not from shame this time, but to hide the smallest signs of hope. Calder spoke smoothly. "Widow Blythe, your return is welcome. The court is prepared to resume technical examination of the vessels." Honora looked at the empty royal table. "No." The word rang with the old bowl in her arms. Calder's brow lifted. "No, I will not repair a single royal cup, test a single noble plate, or restore one serving bowl for this court until every exposed worker and soldier is named, examined, treated, paid for lost labor, and compensated for illness caused in royal service." Calder gave a soft, incredulous laugh. "So the truth finally becomes a price." Honora turned to him. "No. The price was already paid by hands you hoped would shake quietly." The workers went still. Tavian looked toward the clock. "Write her terms." Calder stepped forward. "Majesty, this is coercion. She is withholding craft service from the crown during a provision crisis." Honora held up the wrapped bowl. "You called it superstition when it warned you. Do not call it essential now because your table is empty." Tavian's voice cut in, low and final. "Write her terms." The clerk began. Honora added, "Not as mercy." The pen stopped. "As debt?" she said. "Mercy lets the powerful decide when they have been generous enough. Debt admits something was owed before anyone begged." Tavian looked at her then, and the room between them filled with every quiet evening he had once spent in her workshop, every silence she had mistaken for understanding, every bowl he had broken because understanding became inconvenient in public. "As debt," he said. Calder's eyes cooled. "A dangerous precedent." Honora faced the workers. "So is survival." One by one, names were read aloud. Perrin, kitchen runner; Elsa, scullery girl; Marabelle, sculled maid; Harlan Oat, broth carrier; Senate Pike, cavalry cook; Old Bryn, West pantry. More followed. Each name entered the ledger beneath Tavian's seal. Each illness was spoken without being turned into weakness. Trembling hands, grey lips, stomach fire, short breath, lost wages, dismissed shifts, winter lung, smoke cough, laziness, drama. All the clean little names used to hide slow harm. At the end, Tavian took the pen. Honora watched carefully. "Do not sign like a king rescuing servants," she said. He looked at her. "How should I sign? Like the man whose court fed them from unsafe vessels." The room held its breath. Tavian bent and signed. Not beautifully. Hard enough that the nib tore the parchment. "Will you stay for the test?" he asked. Honora looked at the workers before answering. "I will stand with them," she said. "Do not mistake that for returning to you." Pain crossed his face. He accepted it. "Good." Honora unwrapped her mother's bowl and placed it at the center of the stripped royal table. Then she laid the broken moonclay shards around it, each one black-veined, each one touched by a different warning the court had ignored. The bowl gave one clear ring. The shards rose slightly from the table. Moonlight caught their edges, and names began to glow above the clay. Not in ink, but in pale steam. The workers' names, the soldiers' names, then shipment marks, then dates. Calder's calm thinned for the first time. The old bowl darkened around its rim, and a new line formed inside the clay. Compensation oath accepted. Illness record opening. The names rose from the moonclay in pale steam. Not beautifully. Truth rarely cared about beauty once it had been buried long enough. It came in kitchen names first. Perrin, Elsa, Marabelle, Harlan Oat, Old Bryn, then soldiers, then kiln loaders, then pantry women who had been told shaking hands meant age, laziness, nerves, winter, anything except the vessels they washed and carried. Each name hovered above a broken shard. Each shard darkened at its edge. Calder Sen watched the steam with the face of a man pretending weather had entered the room. Names prove illness, he said, not cause. Honora did not look at him. Then let cause speak. The old bowl rang. Shipment marks appeared next. Crescent seal after crescent seal. Feast goblets. Kitchen tasting cups. Soldier broth vessels. Pantry storage jars. Dates. Storehouses. Replacement wash. Entries. Each one tied back to Black Marl compound approved under Calder's private provision mark. The whole did not gasp now. It was past shock. This was worse. Recognition. Tavian stood beside the worker's ledger, his hand still stained with ink from the compensation oath. Read every shipment aloud. Calder turned sharply. Majesty, that will damage confidence in royal provisioning across the pack. Tavian looked at the workers seated where nobles had once eaten. Good. Confidence that required their sickness deserves damage. The clerk began to read, shipment by shipment, date by date. Every time Calder's crescent seal was spoken, a royal cup fragment on the table split again, smaller cracks branching outward like lies losing their shape. Honora stood with both hands on the edge of the stripped table. She did not feel victorious. Victory would have been warning them before Perrin collapsed. Victory would have been keeping her bowls whole. Victory would have been her husband alive beside the kiln, laughing softly when she worked too late. The thought had barely formed when her mother's bowl went cold. Not warm, cold, so cold frost silvered the rim. Honora looked down. A new steam line rose from the center of the vessel. Early Black Marl trial. Blythe household cup. Her breath stopped. Tavian saw her face before he saw the words. Honora? She could not answer. The bowl showed a date. 7 years earlier. The year her husband took to his bed. The year Calder's office had praised experimental durability in low-cost campwear. The year every healer called Edric Blythe's shaking hands winter lung because grief and poverty made convenient diagnoses. Calder's calm cracked only at the eyes. Experimental trial records are irrelevant to the current feast supply. Honora lifted her gaze to him. For once, there was no restraint left to polish. You sent a trial cup to my house. A workshop sample, Calder said. Common professional courtesy. My husband ate from it. Your husband was already ill. The old bowl struck the table by itself, not hard enough to break, hard enough to silence every breath in Briar Kiln Court. Steam formed again, thicker now, carrying words not from royal ink, but from clay memory. Blythe cup returned black-veined. Report dismissed. Contract competitor neutralized. The room disappeared around Honora, for one terrible heartbeat. Not because she fainted. She had survived too many years to give Calder the mercy of collapse. She stayed standing, but the world narrowed to the cup Edric had held with shaking hands, to her own voice begging healers to test the glaze, to Calder's office returning her packet as widow residue. Tavian moved one step toward her, then stopped. Good. Even in grief, he remembered not to take space she had not offered. Honora spoke very quietly. Say his name. Calder's mouth tightened. This is emotional theater. Say his name. Tavian turned on him. Say it. Calder looked at the table. The workers, the nobles, the broken cups. His silence did what confession would not. Honora said it herself. Edric Blythe. The old bowl rang once. Every shard answered. Tavian faced the court. Record that Calder Sen's provision office dismissed the black-veined return of Edric Blythe's household cup and continued Black Marl testing into royal service. Calder stepped back. You cannot condemn me on vessel memory. No, Tavian said. But I can remove you from every office you used to hide behind until trial, ledger review, and worker testimony are complete. He turned to the guard captain. Calder Sen is stripped of royal provision authority. Seal his accounts. Freeze his estates attached to supply profit. No worker under his office is to be threatened, dismissed, or paid through Calder's men again. Guards moved. Calder did not fight them. Men like him rarely did in public. He only looked at Honora, as if her survival had become an administrative inconvenience. She looked back until he turned away first. Then Tavian stepped before the stripped table, not above it. "I broke Honora Blythe's Moonclay Witness Vessels," he said, voice carrying through Briar Kiln Court. "I called inherited women's craft superstition because certified records sounded cleaner than stained hands. I trusted Calder's seal over the artisan who warned me before anyone drank. Every illness named here is now crown debt." No one moved, Tavian continued. "Treatment begins today. Compensation begins before the next royal feast is planned. The royal kitchens will not reopen under Calder's vessels. The Moonclay Witness Vessels are restored as court safety law if Honora Blythe chooses to teach that law." He looked at her then, not claiming, asking with his silence before words dared arrive. Honora touched the old bowl. "Not alone." Tavian nodded. "Name the women." So she did. Kiln widows, scullery girls, pantry wives, old workers who knew heat by smell and poison by the way water behaved in clay. Their names entered the royal record as teachers, not helpers. Only then did the old bowl turn pale again. Clean. Honora closed her eyes. When she opened them, Tavian stood several steps away. "I have no right to ask for what I broke between us," he said. "No," she answered. "I know." "Do you?" His voice roughened. "I know I believed in you when it comforted me, then doubted you when belief cost my pride." That reached her, not as forgiveness, as the first honest shape of repair. Honora gathered one broken shard and placed it in his open hand. "When the last worker is paid," she said, "bring this to my kiln." His fingers closed around the shard with care this time. "And if you refuse to open the door, then you will wait outside with the truth in your hand." Tavian bowed his head. "I will." Honora walked out of Briar Kiln Court beside Elsa and the kitchen workers, not summoned, not dismissed, not restored by a king. Behind her, the old Moonclay bowl rang once more. This time, it sounded clean.